The views and opinions expressed on this podcast is not a direct reflection of the host and his guest's current or previous employers. The topics and hot takes discussed are meant to create conversations while offering a different perspective to current issues in the strength and conditioning industry. The opinions shared on this podcast are not meant to demean or offend anyone. However, as my grandfather used to say, a hit dog will holler. Thank you and enjoy the show. This podcast is sponsored by Simply Faster. Simply Faster is an educational resource and an open platform for coaches to share best practices and firsthand insights while providing peerless technology, equipment, and service. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Season 1, Episode 6 of TheCrocShow. Today, I got another special guest for y'all, man. Somebody that I've had a relationship with since the pandemic, and as always, I'm going to let this young man introduce himself and tell you any and every relevant information about him and his career. So, Coach Noonan, go ahead, take it away.
Man, Coach Croc, appreciate you, brother, man. It's an honor to be on the podcast. It's an honor to have continued our relationship. My name is Peter Noonan. I am the head strength and conditioning coach for Hendrickson High School. I work with football, boys and girls soccer, baseball. I'm also the head powerlifting coach for boys and girls. This is the fourth year I've been at Hendrickson. This is the 15th year I've been a coach. I've coached multiple sports before: boys soccer, wrestling, throwers. So I've been able to gain a lot of knowledge, on-field experience with a variety of sports that has helped me grow as a strength and conditioning coach. And I've just been fortunate enough to meet amazing people along the way, like yourself.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah. As you said, coaching a lot of different sports and stuff. I think as strength coaches, it's a huge plus when you're able to coach like the soccers and the footballs. And, I've had coaches on here that coach track and things like that. And, obviously you being a head powerlifting coach, what would you say is one of the fun things about being the strength coach, but also the powerlifting coach? Because I know there's a lot of programs that don't have strength coaches, and when off season rolls around, and I'm mainly talking about football, but when off season rolls around, they're like, "Hey, go powerlift." How do you navigate being the head strength coach, but then also being the head powerlifting coach?
So that's a great question, man, and I've had this discussion with multiple people. For me, they are two separate entities. Mm-hmm. Strength and conditioning, as it pertains to athletic development, is strictly that. I am preparing you for the demands of practice of your sport. And that I took from Zach Dakin. I hope I said his name right. Yeah. The UT Athletic Performance Clinic, I think it was two Januaries ago, he spoke. And that just resonated with me. So for me, right, whether it's football, whether it's girls soccer, boys soccer, baseball, or anybody that I have the privilege to work with, I want to make sure that you are ready to go for practice. So I got to make sure that you're a good mover. I got to make sure that you are proficient in the general planes of motion, right? Squat, hinge, push, pull, carry, throw, press. You got to be proficient in that. When we go to powerlifting, we are strictly preparing for the meet, right? The demands of practice are preparation for the meet. So that means we focus on the technical aspects of squat, of bench, of deadlift. And what do those mechanics look like? What does it look like to be a spotter? What does it look like to be a judge, right? So we train all those realms as specific to powerlifting. Do we use powerlifting movements in strength and conditioning? Yes, we squat. We have squat variations. We have bench variations. We have deadlift variations. But at the end of the day, I don't train football or anybody else like I train my powerlifters. They're not going to be in the gear. They're not going to have to necessarily pause. And I also take some of that, though, with the powerlifting, and we try to work in some zone 2 so that you can recover in the middle of a meet. We will sled push. We will sled carry. I mean, that was a big deal for Westside. Barbell is getting in that sled work and getting some of that GPP so that you can recover and perform at a meet.
For sure. And I think that it's critical that you say that, because I think there's this misconception that, like, hey, if you want to get better at your sport, go power lift, right? And yes, you will improve in the, like you said, squat, bench, deadlift. But like I tell my athletes, I'm not in here to make you a better power lifter, a better Olympic lifter, right? We're not in here doing CrossFit. We are training for the sport demands, right? And so, like you said, we're trying to be proficient at squatting, hinging, pushing, pulling, for me, triple extension. And I think that that's important for coaches to hear, because they think that, like, powerlifting translates to being a better soccer player, basketball, football. And it's like, yes, if we're talking about, maximum absolute strength, then of course, but it's great that you squat 500 pounds, but if you lack mobility, then you're probably going to perform poorly in your sport, right? It's great that you can bench press 350 pounds in a suit, but if you lack the internal external rotation in the shoulder, you're probably not going to be able to throw very hard or very fast. And so I've definitely been at places where I've had athletes, and I've had conversations with these athletes saying, like, hey, look, if you are using powerlifting to get better at said sport, one, I'm here and we're doing off season, right? So that kind of gives you that excuse not to do powerlifting. But two, powerlifting, like you said, is different from strength and conditioning. And I wish coaches would understand that, and I wish coaches wouldn't push powerlifting to improve or enhance their sport, because powerlifting has its own sport demands, just like football and soccer, and they don't necessarily mirror each other. Not saying that max strength isn't important, but again, so is mobility, so is flexibility. And with powerlifting, you're geared, like you said. For the girls, they may be unequipped, but the point is, they have their own lanes, and they shouldn't necessarily kind of blend and merge. But in an off-season program with strength and conditioning, yeah, we might do max effort and we might test and things like that, but it's not a weekly deal.
No, and honestly, I'm just super blessed that we had the number of kids that we had. 50 different boys competed in a meet.
Yeah.
At least I tried to get them in at least 2 meets. 24 different girls competed in at least 2 meets. And of those total number of kids, I would say 90-something% were all multi-sport. And I'm not just talking like football and powerlifting. I'm talking like football, powerlifting, wrestling, throwing or running, baseball, and no, I didn't have any basketball kids.
Yeah, I was gonna say you probably didn't have no basketball.
No, but one of our kids, who he powerlifted, but this young man is just involved in everything possible. He also plays tennis. Like, he's a 4-sport athlete, man, and
that's rare.
Oh, super rare, and he loves it all, and he finds time for it all. I don't know how his body holds up. But, on the girls' side, soccer players, volleyball players, the 2 basketball girls, they didn't play this year, but they're former basketball players. Mm-hmm. Our state champion is a cheerleader, is a gymnast. The softball girls that played, powerlifting, I think, helped to get them stronger. Mm-hmm. But I will not be here and say, oh, powerlifting made our regional qualifier, who was also the girls soccer leading goal scorer, and Tasco, all-state player. Oh, that she powerlifted, so that's why she's a really good soccer player.
Yeah.
Her dad was like, if she wants to try it, she can try it.
Yeah.
I said, hey, you want to try it? And her sister showed up. They lifted unequipped. Should have had both of them at regional, but the one that didn't make regional, she would have made state if she wasn't already hampered by I think she had gotten kicked by a ball like earlier in the week, so she was still having a lingering kind of a stinger. Excuse me. But I mean, they were good at powerlifting because they had trained for powerlifting.
Yeah.
They were good at their sport because they had spent time. What powerlifting and what training with me helped them do is just simply perform and have that other component that I think that we bring as strength and conditioning coaches, is that mental component, right? We give them that self-confidence to be like, man, look at what I've done. Look at what I've overcome in the weight room. Look at what I thought I couldn't do and where I'm at now. And look at the inspiration that I can give and be given from my teammates. We try to do a really good job of having guys be not just recovering or spotters, particularly during football. So like if we're in a group of 3, we project our stuff for the workout of the day. That's whatever. Let's say it's front squat, right? So we got a front squatter. That second person is a spotter / coach / encourager. Like it literally says it on the slide. These are your jobs.
Yeah.
Ensure the safety of the lifter, and give him coaching points if you can. But most of all, give him encouragement, right? Put out what you want back so that when we get onto the field and it's in the fourth quarter and you're tired, you have already given that person encouragement, and now they can give it back to you when it matters because you have figured out how to pull that out when you're tired in the weight room.
Yeah. And what I love what you said about that, and I actually had this conversation with my athletes this week. What we do in the weight room can directly translate, and I'm not just talking about weight, like lifting weights and stuff. What I was telling my athletes is that, if you play soccer, right? I've never been to a soccer game where the girls or the boys on the field were just quiet. You have to communicate. Hey, you're here. Hey, out, in, right? Same thing in volleyball. Like, I can't think of any sports, maybe except for track, where like communication isn't a key component, right, to winning and losing, right, or winning that rep or whatever the case may be. And so, excuse me, I had to tell my athletes that, like you said, everybody has a role, everybody has a job. So for us, it's like one person's lifting, one person's spotting, the third person's encouraging, right? And if we have a fourth person, that fourth person, we either have 2 side spots, right? Or we have, 2 encouragers, right? Bringing the juice. And I tell them, I'm like, hey, if you can get comfortable getting into a habit of, hey, Noonan, my set's coming up. I need you to take that 10 off for me. Hey, Noonan, what's that on the bar? 135. Cool. I need 155. Hey, throw a 10 on for me. Hey, Noonan, if me and you can get into that habit of communicating, it's only going to translate to the field where now all of a sudden, hey, Noonan, out, right? And I try to explain it to my athletes, and a majority of them get it, right? I think one of the problems I also have is not all my athletes want to train. So obviously you're kind of beating a dead horse there, as they say. But what would you say is, one of the challenges with being a football coach, strength coach, powerlifting? Because I think that powerlifting is one of those sports where if you don't take it serious, you're going to get embarrassed. You know what I'm saying? Like if you show up there with your kids and they're not hitting depth and it's red flag, and kids are bottoming out and they're scratching on squat and they're not even competing. Like that's embarrassing. It's no different than like your relay team is dropping the baton on the first exchange and they don't even finish the race. It's like, why did you even show up with this 4x1 if you didn't even work handoffs and stuff? So like, what are some of the challenges with, wearing all of those different hats?
Yeah, that's a great question. On the guy side, it's the established expectations that I've put forth with them. So the majority of my male powerlifters all come from football. And so they understand this is what I expect of you. And when we are in here for training, we're getting this work done. And when you're done, you are gone. It's not a hangout session.
Yeah.
Now, we have built a family culture, which is really crazy because we've had so many kids that we've also had to have 2 training times. So like even with my girls, half the girls lift in the morning, half the girls lift in the afternoon. Sometimes they never see each other, but on the days of the meets, man, it's like you'd have thought they would have been next to each other all this time. It's really cool. But setting expectations, following through with expectations, having tough conversations with kids about, safety, and ensuring that we're constantly reviewing the mechanics of what's going on. And then that's what helps prepare us for the meets with powerlifting. With football, the challenges is addressing, how they get, how hurt or injured they might be, how they're fatiguing based on practice time and such, and where are they coming from, controlling what we can control. Obviously we're going to fight sleep and nutrition and hydration, those components are always going to be something that we can do the best we can, but we can't cover everything.
Yeah.
So we sell muscle milk, shakes and bars. Football is the main one that gets it. It's open to everybody, but football is really taking advantage of it. Baseball has too as well. So we're on a block schedule. So varsity football and JV football is the first period of the day. Afterwards, man, kids buying a shake in a bar, 2 shakes in a bar, and I took that from Cody Harvey at China Spring, and it's just been really good. Sometimes it's hard to keep stuff in stock, and sometimes, they don't go through it as fast. And if I don't have strawberry or vanilla, they think chocolate is the grossest, and I'm like, bro, it's protein. Like, let's go with it, man. But those are things that we really focus on, is just trying to educate as much as we can and hold to the standard. And I think if we don't hold to the standard as coaches, and kids don't hold to the standard to each other, that's where more and more problems are created.
For sure. And one thing I heard that you said a lot was like the mechanics, and I think that gets lost. Mainly speaking in powerlifting, I did powerlifting for a year and assisted with writing programs for powerlifting. But that's one thing I noticed. It's like powerlifting isn't necessarily like a grind it out. Like there obviously there's technique involved, but like it's repetition. It's like with anything else. So if you're not repping a good squat movement pattern, you're not going to show up on meet day and all of a sudden be able to squat with great form and technique, right? If your approach and your attitude isn't practiced throughout the week, it's not going to translate into the meet. And so I think that's one thing that I really like about powerlifting is, like you said, you find out a lot about yourself. You kind of create this family atmosphere. People that are on the same team that may not see each other as much are still rooting, and it comes from that foundation and the standards and everything that you set forward. And so, shout out to, powerlifting and all the powerlifting coaches out there. But I think the other side of the coin is the bad powerlifting that's going on out there, right? Which is, like I said, like the grinding it out and everything. And I think that, some sports do kind of get taken advantage of, but I think that some people misuse powerlifting, right? And I think powerlifting from a mental aspect is great. I'm not one of those that thinks that like you can train mental toughness, but you can definitely find out a lot about somebody when they're competing against themselves, right? Because if your best squat is 400 and you're competing against somebody whose best squat is 550, you're not going to pull 150 out of your ass. And unfortunately not, right? But you can pull a 410, a 415, right? Maybe that person that you can't catch still motivates you to go out there and be the best version of yourself. And so what would you say to, I know we kind of touched on it, but what would you say to the coaches that think that like, hey, when football's over, you need to be in powerlifting? Because again, we're talking about, how it translates to sport, right? And let's say a school doesn't have a, strength program. What do you say to the coaches, or what would you advise for the coaches that say like, if you're not doing football, you need to be doing powerlifting. If you're not doing sport A, you need to be doing powerlifting. What do you say to those coaches that kind of push powerlifting either on their kids or on their programs?
I would say you need to be mindful, right? The point of powerlifting is not just to get stronger, at least for us.
Yeah.
Our goal, our goal is, and we've progressed to this, because when I took it over, I was open to, hey, come show up. Now, we were always going to treat it as powerlifting, not football off season. And that's probably one of the first things I would say is that you cannot say that powerlifting is football off season.
Yeah.
They're two separate things, because I don't know a powerlifter that cares about what their fly 10 time is. I don't know a powerlifter that cares about what their vertical or broad jump is.
Yeah.
It's great if they can do all that, but it doesn't matter, because it doesn't pertain to the sport. They're not accelerating anything but the bar.
Yeah.
Does it help in their recovery and their performance if they have a good aerobic capacity and maybe they have some good cardiovascular? Absolutely. But it's not the end all be all. If I want GBP, man, we're hitting some jump ropes, we're hitting some sled work, we're hitting walking lunges, we're hitting carries. Like, I'm gonna get a bang for buck kind of cardio
Yeah.
with my kids. So we're not treating powerlifting like, hey, we're just this extension of football, and hey, I'm gonna take a paycheck, and well, and then that irritates me, man. And it irritates me when coaches show up to meets and they don't know.
No coaching is being done.
No coaching is being done, and it's like, man, you were doing these kids a disservice, man. Like, you can't just show up and take a paycheck. You wouldn't do it for football.
Yeah.
Right?
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. Or what, if it's a sport you love, you wouldn't do it like that. So why are you, if we say we get into this for the kids, then do you not owe it to the kids to make sure that one, just know the daggone rules.
Yeah.
Right? Let's start there. Like, let's know how to teach them what to do. And two, understand that powerlifting is powerlifting. Football is football. Can they cross over? Yes. We've talked about it plenty of times of how they can complement each other. Mm-hmm. But one does not, you don't get better at football by just lifting. You got to go play football. You got to go study football, right? If you want to get stronger, you can lift, but there are other things that can also help you get stronger, right? So making sure that you're not just making powerlifting football off season.
Yeah.
You also got to make sure that you're not just taking a paycheck, right? Coach it up, teach it up. And then kind of what I was getting to now is year one, it was grow the program.
Yeah.
Year two, okay, we've grown the program. We'll add a little bit more. Let's push and let's get more kids qualified for regional and state, and which we did. Year three, hey, stop trying to grow the program. We got, like, it becomes a negative return on investment. And it has nothing to do with the kids. It's budgetary issues. It's number of meets, because the only way we got 50 guys to 2 meets is we created this Thursday league between the 4 Pflugerville schools, Hutto, Austin Navarro came a couple times. Who else? There was Thrall. So, like, we just kind of rotated who was hosting. Well, we hosted 2 meets here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if I'm going to host a meet, I'm going to throw a bunch of my kids in. But I can't do that every time, because now I'm taxing all my other coaches. Like, there's only so much good will somebody has before they're like, hey, man, like,
only so many times these sport coaches are going to show up for free.
You're killing me, man. So I now try to take care of these guys as best I can, and then our female trainer, showing up to help us out with weigh-ins, but so now for us, it's okay. Well, I have a state champion. I had 5 total girls qualify for state. I had 3 total boys qualify for state. Let's try to add to that. Oh, and by the way, it ain't just about you and you and you. It's about us. Yeah. How do we get the team trophy? Like, I told the kids and I told my wife, I was like, I think she was in the elevator. I think when we saw one of them, I was like, I want the big state of Texas trophy. One?
Yeah.
I want that. Like, I want to put that up on the wall, because here's the deal. If we're getting that, there's a good chance that you're getting your personal accolades. Like, there's enough room at the table for all of us to shine and all of us to eat. And I think that's what's so great for us, is that we've created that family atmosphere that, hey, I want to succeed, not just for me, but for the team. And I think that that's where it can get lost with powerlifting, is because you see it so much as like this individual lens.
Yeah.
You forget about everything. And I'm talking about more from probably the high school and the collegiate setting. Once you get above that, that's totally different, right?
It's not team powerlifting.
No, but high school and college, there's enough still where you want to talk team and you want to focus team. And I think that's where the team-centered stuff still can benefit a football or somebody else, because you're still competing against yourself, right? But you're competing against somebody else for the betterment of the team. And so not losing sight of that. And then obviously as you progress through postseason and you only have a few kids qualify, well, that's a different story. Now it does become more individualistic. But I've told the kids, I said, just because you're the one lifter, there's 12 other people involved in your one lift, right?
Yeah.
There's the judges, there's the spotters and loaders, there's me, there's the table workers. Like, it's a whole production for one person at one moment in time. Well, that's no different than a team sport. It's a whole deal for one little moment in time. So let's continue to understand what's going on around us and not just have blinders on.
Yeah, and one thing in my time in powerlifting, I noticed, man, these girls get after it, right? I mean, people say like the weight standards, the totals for the female powerlifting versus male powerlifting is different, but at the same time, like it's still based on body weight, right? But these female powerlifters get after it, and a lot of times you can find those hidden gems in the other sports, like you talked about. You have former basketball players, you have soccer players, you have volleyball players in the off season, whatever the case may be. And I think that that's a great recruitment when you're a strength coach, is you get to see those kids training, how they interact, because the strongest girl may not be the best teammate. You know what I'm saying? Because you talk about family atmosphere and everything. And so, you know, to anybody out there looking at getting involved in powerlifting, you hit it. You said it perfectly. Know the rules.
Yeah.
Don't sit up there and, hey, your opener is going to be 200 on squat, and then they miss it, and then you turn around and say, oh, can we put 185 on the bar? Like, no, you can't do that in powerlifting.
Yeah.
You can't change your opener after you've attempted it, right? So, like, know the rules. And then obviously, like you said, grow the program. It's better to have too many kids than not enough, right? Because at the end of the day, like you said, there's only so many meets. The school bus only holds 50. If I got 50 guys and 24 girls, that means somebody's not going to be able to go. I only got 50 seats,
Yeah.
right? And then, like you said, once you grow the program and everything, you kind of build on that. And then your biggest promoter is, like you said, if you go and get that state of Texas state championship plaque, and people see that, and you get a lot of kids that, especially if you're in a losing program, you get kids that say like, hey, I haven't won a lot. I've been in high school for 3 years, and I've been playing this sport and that sport and that sport, and we've got our butts kicked in all three of those sports. Here I can do powerlifting, where we can go to a Pflugerville high meet and we can go be meet champs, and it feels good to be a winner, and like you said, a team aspect. And so if you're a strength coach and you can do powerlifting, I advise, you know, that you do it, because it's a different feel, especially when you're at that meet, especially if you're at state meet. But even if you're at the right kind of meet where there's 100 people crammed into a room, but there's 4 platforms going, and it's like, hey, it's fast. You got to get the knee wraps on and off. You're getting pulled in different directions because you might have 2-3 kids going, and then you get the kids, like you talked about when you're in the weight room, where now the kids are coaching kids. Now that power lifter who may not be the strongest, he can still identify what good depth looks like.
Yeah.
He can still slap that floor and tell him to come up. So it's like, you don't have to be the strongest to be a great teammate or to even be a great power lifter.
Piggybacking off of what you talked about, like the strongest person may not be the best person. I had the opportunity to talk with a collegiate powerlifting coach at the girls' state meet, and he mentioned how they were recruiting a young lady, and they noticed a year ago that she was kind of very standoffish, right? Mm-hmm. It was very me. I got done with my lifts. I moved away. I got into my bubble, and I focused on me. And I guess there was a conversation that came up about it. I don't know the exact details, but he said the next year it was totally different. When she got done, it wasn't retreat.
Yeah.
It was go give energy to somebody else. And that goes back to what we were talking about, right? With like assigning encouragement. Like, it's crazy to think like, oh, what do you mean? Why do you need to assign encouragement? Because it doesn't come natural.
Yeah.
Especially in a sport that is very individualistic, like powerlifting, where you can get lost in your thoughts. Like, man, let's say I got 2 whites and a red. I'm like, okay, fine, move on. You got it. Next lift. But for whatever reason, you're dwelling on why you got a red, or you got 3 reds or 2 reds and you didn't get your lift. Why? Or you're too high and you're celebrating because you hit your second attempt and you still got one more attempt. And maybe it wasn't even a PR on your second attempt. It was just the same way you've been doing for the last week or 2 weeks. Like, you got to move past that and go on. So yeah, like, when we're training our team sports, we do have to assign encouragement because kids, it's probably society in general is very quick to pull you down and not push you up.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge lesson that we can teach these kids and these young people and remind ourselves as coaches is like, man, push up, because we do a lot of tear down. Hey, you're not moving this way. You need to hinge this way better. You need to try this. It's like we're always correcting, and sometimes we forget we need to congratulate. We may need to encourage. And I think that's one of the best things about strength and conditioning in general and powerlifting as well is like, you don't have to be the biggest. You don't have to be the strongest or the fastest to feel better about yourself.
Yep.
And that time under the bar, man, and that mental fortitude that it takes to get uncomfortable in that moment in time to lift a weight, particularly if you're somebody that really doesn't like the weight room.
Yeah.
You may never love it, but you come to appreciate and be like, man, I'm actually getting better today. I am, as Monty Sparkman said, man, you have today's an opportunity to do something you've never done before. It might be go and hit half an inch higher on your vert.
Yeah.
It's still half an inch higher. It's
Improvement.
still better.
1% better, yeah.
You drop 0.2 of a second on your fly. Man, that's the improvement. You add 5 pounds to your last time that you did. Let's say you repped out 315 on squat for 5 and you do it 6. That's one more that you didn't do. Or you go 320. Like those small incremental wins add up over time.
And it's ironic with society today, kids, they love being on their phones. They love getting likes and comments and everything. But then when it's time to give it, like verbally, all of a sudden they kind of, and it's just weird because they'll be on their phones and they'll like this person's post or repost or retweet or whatever. But then when you're in a weight room or you're in an uncomfortable setting, all of a sudden they kind of lose their voice. So you're right. I think it is important that you do assign, bringing the juice as we call it, or, being a motivator, that you assign that. When we test, we use Rat Coach and we'll have, groups of 5. And so one person will be lifting, the second person will be spotting, the third person's maybe doing mobility, and then the fourth and fifth person are motivating. And they'll be like, why did you put motivate on there or bring the juice on there? It's like, because like kids, first of all, are visual learners, right? So if they see it and they know that, okay, my role is to motivate, I don't care if you're clapping your hands, you're screaming, you're yelling, but like encourage them the way and in a way that you would want to be encouraged, because they can do it on social media, right? But we need to do it really where it really counts, which is when we're out there on the field or on the court or on the track. And so that's a really good point. One thing you said too that almost got me triggered, coaches showing up for a check, and I think that, like you said, it's a disservice to the kids because there's not a lot of coaches that I know, at least, or I don't know any coaches that coach to get rich.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And especially at the high school level, right? You're probably teaching, or you're probably teaching, and you're doing probably 1 or 2 sports. So those 2 sports that you're doing, one would hope that you're doing it because you're passionate about the kids and about the sport. Naturally, you should be passionate about the kids. So then if you're passionate about the sport, then that means you're going to give the kids the best experience, right? And I think nowadays we're getting a lot of coaches, and I'll shoot them some bail. I'll give them a little slack. They kind of get that coaching fatigue.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I love what I do. I love where I work. I enjoy being around the kids, but I'm just so mentally exhausted from the BS from school and my principal's making me do this and my home life, to the point where they're not bettering themselves in their particular sport. And now they're cheating the kids by not giving them the best experience. And I tell my kids, if I can't give you the best version of myself, or I can't give you my 100%, I'm not coming to work. So if my kids are sick and I'm worried about my kids, I'm going to stay home and take care of my kids, because if I'm worrying about my kids while I'm at work, I'm not giving you my best, right? If I feel sick and I feel like I can't coach to my standard and my expectation, then I'm gonna stay home if I'm sick. And I think sometimes, and I think it's a society and especially coaches that were born in, the 80s and the 90s, it's like, you gotta tough it out. You gotta thug it out, and it's like, if you can't be the best version of yourself, then like take care of yourself until you can. Because if you don't, then you're cheating the kids. And like we talk about, like the kids cheating the coaches. If you know that you're capable of, jumping 32 inches, but you're not feeling it today and you just step up there and you jump 30, well, you're not living up to the standards that you set. Because when we tested, you tested at a 32-inch vertical. You told me you can jump 32 inches. Now, because the weather's all crazy and you're not getting a bunch of likes on your social media and your relationship is down the toilet, now you want to come in here and jump 30. And then we translate that to sport. If it's competition, I need that 32-inch vertical to go grab that rebound, to go make that kill, to go intercept that ball. Anything less than that isn't getting that rebound, isn't getting that kill, isn't getting that interception. And so I think that, with, like we talked about powerlifting a lot, we can always tie these things back to your sport, right? And we can always translate them to life and the challenges and everything.
I think it's important too that wherever you work, and this can apply to corporate America, but if you don't like working around the people you work with, particularly like with teaching and with coaching, like if you don't like that, man, it might be time for you to go.
Yeah, for sure.
You might need a change of environment because, like, I introduced you to several of the guys on our staff, man, and I meant exactly what I said about those people, about a Storm Woods, about a Jeff Trevelyan, and a lot of the guys on our staff, man,
I got you.
They help me the same way I help them make each other better. And it's really hard to show up on a day-to-day basis and watch somebody else put in more effort and energy than you do and be okay with that. And it's like, man, there are times where I'm like, ooh, I didn't have it today.
Yeah.
But he did. He picked me up. So the next time that he don't have it, I'm gonna pick him up. And that's excuse me. I think that's the sign of a really good staff, is when maybe you're not sick enough to stay home, you need to be there.
Yeah.
And you're trying, like let's say with football, we're trying to install this coverage or this blitz or whatever, and you're like, man, I need to be there, I need to help and go through it. But I coach the best that I can, but I can't be as loud as I normally am. I can't bounce around. Well, this guy is going to pick me up and he's going to do it. So the next time that he's struggling or whatever, we have some deep conversations. And those people that and even if they're not there at the school you work at or the place you work at, but you can text them or call them.
Yeah.
And they can be like, hey, bro, you need to cut it. Like, you're not approaching this in the right way. Or they can say, hey, you're fine, man. You're going to weather this storm or whatever, and boost you up from a positive standpoint and a realistic standpoint, and not just gas you up. I think we can all find a lot of people that'll gas us up, but those aren't the people that you need.
Yeah.
The people that you need are the ones that are going to hold you accountable. They're going to tell you what you need to hear, and they'll also make sure that you feel the love when you need to feel the love, and feel appreciated at the end of the day when it's all said and done, because they believe in you, right? And you should believe in yourself.
For sure. And that leads me to like my next thing about the importance of a coaching circle. When I was a younger coach, I used to think that, and it was true, but I used to be insecure about like, I don't have a mentor. I don't have somebody that is pouring into me and teaching me all of the things that I need to know. And then as I got older, I realized, okay, I may not have a said mentor, but it doesn't mean that I can't be a mentor, right? So if you don't have a mentor, you can be a mentor. But what you mentioned about your coaches, I think it's important to have a good circle of coaches that can pick you up when you're down, that can tell you that you're on some BS today, knock it off, and be truthful when they say it, and not, like you said, just gassing you up, knowing, hey, Noonan's sick today. His voice a little raspy. He's not feeling it today. Okay, cool. So now I'm not going to kick your back in because you're not bringing the juice, knowing that you're weathering the storm because you've been sick. I think it's also important to have a circle of coaches to bounce ideas off of and things like that, but also that are going through different walks of life or have different challenges, because sometimes, like you said earlier, like with the powerlifter, you get in your bubble and you get insulated and you isolate yourself from everything, and reality kind of distorts itself where it's like, hey, this problem that you think you have really isn't a problem, right? Like, for example, we got 50 boys powerlifting. It's a problem, but it's not a problem, being that you could have 15.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, to stress over some of the things that we stress about, it's good to have that circle to be like, nah, you're tripping. Mm-hmm. You're tripping, right? But then it's also good to have the ones that are like, no, you should be tripping. Like, you're too relaxed. You should be a little more amped up about this. And so, to all my coaches out there, make sure you have a circle. Doesn't have to be a big circle. It can be 2 or 3 coaches, 2 or 3. It can even be non-coaches, right? My dad, for example, is like my role model. Mm-hmm. Never been a strength coach, but he can teach me and tell me things about how to be a leader. He can tell me how to handle adversity. He can tell me how, he handles uncomfortable conversations. He's had to tell people, hey, we're not renewing your contract. We're not bringing you back. That's uncomfortable. I can apply those techniques to having a conversation with a coach in the weight room who's sitting there on their phone the whole time, not coaching. That's uncomfortable. So it's like, you can make a circle that doesn't have to be just coaches. And I think the more people you have in that circle that are like you, but also in different worlds, right? So you're a head powerlifting coach, you're a head strength coach, and in your circle is a manager for a company or a supervisor or a team leader. They're in a leadership role, so they can still pour into you and not know anything about powerlifting. I think it's really important too, you have that circle, because sometimes you just hit a wall. Mm-hmm. You hit a wall, and as educators, that wall for us is this time in April and May, when it's 4 weeks of school left, 5 weeks of school left. The kids are acting crazy. The teachers are acting crazy. People are mentally checking out, physically not showing up. And all of a sudden you're like, it's easy to fall into summer's almost here. I'm going to just Cadillac and just cruise. But it's like, we still have work to do. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And like you said earlier, we still have standards. We still have expectations. Like, those things don't go away because there's a month left of school, right? And so I think that it's good to have, a mentor, or be a mentor if you don't have one. I think it's even better to have a circle of people, because that circle of people can serve as your mentor. And like I said, it doesn't have to be people that are specifically in your profession or even in your shoes. I have friends in my circle that aren't head strength coaches, but I still pick their brain and get ideas from them. They don't have to be in charge of a program to have something that's enlightening that can benefit or help me, and vice versa. And so I think that's really great. And I think that for all the coaches out there that don't have a mentor, find one that you admire, because then the relationship and everything is going to be more genuine. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It's easy to say, like, this is the best strength coach in the country, I want him to mentor me. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But there's a difference between, hey, I followed this person on social media from afar and I like the things they say. I like the videos they post. I've gone to clinics and heard this person present and speak. I've listened to this person's podcast. Let me reach out to them and see if we can have a conversation. And then we have a conversation. Let me see if I can hit them up next month and maybe have another conversation. And that right there can develop some form of mentorship, where now you're able to ask questions that you need answers to, that you may not be able to get where you're at. Or you may feel like, I'm trying to figure out how to manage being the head powerlifting coach and the head strength coach. So let me find somebody who's also a powerlifting coach and strength coach, or somebody who's done both, mm-hmm. right? And let me pick their brain and get their ideas, and let me feed off of them. And then, as I say, like, paying it forward, like, let me then take that. And if somebody comes to me and ask for help, I'm going to help them as much as I can. And that's how we push the profession forward, and that's how we grow, is by, seeking a mentor and being a mentor, and then obviously forming your own circle, right? And like I said, it doesn't have to be a big circle. I probably got 5 guys that, I can about 6 guys that I can hit up, for anything: relationship problems, coaching problems, programming problems, speed training, strength training, recover. Like, you got to have those friends, because if you don't, you're going to realize you only know what you know. But it's like the saying goes, you think that you're the smartest person in the room until you get around somebody that's like way smarter, and then you realize you don't know anything.
Yeah.
It's like, I butchered that, but you get the point. But who are some people for you that you would say, you mentioned the coaches here that, have helped you grow as a professional, and also like put things in perspective for you? Because I think that's also important. Like, somebody can offer you good information, but it's like, if I hit my guy UJ up, who's an assistant strength coach at Alabama, like, he's got unlimited resources there. Yeah. So like, his advice, like, yeah, that sounds great. I don't have the budget to, we talked about like nutrition, so I don't have the budget to like feed my guys. So like, what are some practical options, right? Mm-hmm. So who are some people that you would say that, that you consider in your circle, or people that you feel like have helped you along the way?
Man, there's actually a really long list. And it's just very thankful for these people. Monty Sparkman, Kyle Keese, Cody Harvey.
Dogs.
It's just outstanding human beings. Missy Mitchell Macbeth. There's so many things that I'm very thankful for Missy about. She was a huge supporter of my podcast when it launched, and introduced me to people like, it's like, like the people that you talked about, that you admire from afar, and then like they introduce you to other people. It's like, but it's not just like, hey, this is so-and-so.
Yeah.
Hey, this is my guy. This is, hey,
it hits different.
It's like, so it's like,
yeah.
The fact that, I can text, Alan Bishop, mm-hmm. because of my interaction with Monty Sparkman, and it's like, and then getting Alan on my podcast, like, man, like, we all look at what he's doing at U of H basketball and be like, dude is doing work.
Yeah.
But he's super down to earth, super humble. Like, so there's those people. Sean McPherson, man, like, I don't know that people realize just how good of a person Sean is.
Shout out to Powerlift.
Dude, shout out to Powerlift, and Kevin Yoxel too, with Dynamic Strength and Fitness. But like, Sean has reviewed programming of mine. He's helped me navigate stuff, but he also busts my chops. Yeah. And it's like, I was like, hey man, I was thinking like, hey, we got some money. Like, what should I spend it on? I was thinking about some chains, and he was like, well, what do you want chains for? Well, I'll do this or that. Bro, that's not what they're for. Do you know what chains are for? And then I'm like, damn, Sean, like, I'm trying to help you.
Yeah.
He doesn't care about that.
Yeah.
And not that he doesn't want to make money. What he cares about is, what are you doing it for?
Yeah.
Are you doing it for the right reasons? Now, no, I haven't bought any more chains. Part of the issue is, like, there's too many daggum racks. I don't even want to know how expensive it would be to put chains at every rack. But at the end of the day, I am thankful for somebody who could easily just take that check and be like, oh yeah, buy this.
Yeah, here you go. 500 pounds of chains for you, buddy.
Yeah. He's like, no, go research, go read. And then you said you stopped and talked to Brett over at Texas State. Mm-hmm. Well, we took football over to Texas State, and watched the spring practice. So I got to talking with him, and this was like right after I was talking to Sean about chains, and so then I'm talking to Brett about chains, and I'm like, oh wow, like, this is what y'all are doing with it, And I'm like, okay, well, we're not ready for that, so let me scrap that, right? But for somebody to take time out of their busy day and be like, and educate me, and not be upset, and then turn around like 2 weeks later, I'm like, hey, excuse me, we do have this money. I do know I need these things. I know exactly what I'm using them for. This is what I want. And boom, him and Missy are taking care of it right away.
Yeah.
Like, it's just awesome. You know, I'd be remiss if I didn't say one of the biggest people for me is the pastor of the church that I go to currently, my wife and I, and then the pastor that married us, 2 separate people. But man, like, you want to talk about just diversifying your circle, is like those people and just them kind of leading us in a different way. And
Yeah.
And I think for me, at this point in my career, I'm not done coaching kids and making kids better, but I do recognize that I have a responsibility to empower and help coaches. So like for me, this mentor talk, while I still will always need a coach, like I've you know, we've done couples therapy, I've gone to a therapist, like we all need a coach because there's a lot of stuff that rattles around in our brain and we don't know how to disseminate all of it, right? And it's perfectly cool to go do that. There should be nothing wrong for you to say, hey, man, I went and talked to somebody. Yes, they're a third party, but they help me process through stuff.
Yeah.
You know, we go to marriage workshops at church because we want to work on something and improve it. It's not because we are having issues and we are, you know, whatever. It's because we want to recognize and improve.
Yeah.
Right. So it's the same thing in the weight room. We're recognizing and trying to improve. And then I think I just lost my train of thought. But
No, you're good, man.
But no, I mean, like that's just a small amount of people. There's just so many people. You know, also just man, shout out to everybody that participates in the Iron Speed chats on Sunday night.
Yes, sir. Shout out to them people, man. I've done it a couple of times.
I
It's great
appreciate
stuff.
you, man. Coach Chris Romano is a big one on that. He's been a huge help for me. His YouTube channel is awesome for content. And then everybody that has supported the podcast over 4 years and 100+ episodes, man. Like we talked before we hit record. Like, you know, the whole goal of this is because we believe that somebody wants to hear. It may not be what we have to say, but whoever you're getting on, because we want to learn. So I'm hoping that whether it's a conversation between me and somebody else or just a nugget that floats out there, that we can pay it forward and you can learn and help. If I can just help one person learn something,
That's it.
I've accomplished it, man. Because I don't do this. I don't do the podcast for money. I don't do the Iron Speed chat for money. I wish it'd be great.
It'd be nice. You got a little check every now and then, man.
Anybody want to sponsor? You know, let me know. Sponsor my man. Let them know. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's like you said.
Shout out Simply Faster, official sponsor of the Croc Show. Got to throw that in there
There
too.
you go, man. But at the end of the day, it's just about paying it forward, because I got into this because John Henry Mills said, hey, I coached you in high school. I'm still on staff. You got out of school. You don't have a job. Let me help you.
Blessed.
And now that dude is, I don't even know what he's doing now, but you know, like he got me in, a coach got me in. So let me help, because none of this is mine. It doesn't belong to me.
Yeah.
I'm just a vehicle in which information is passing. So let me help somebody.
For sure. I need to start like bringing a notepad so I can jot down stuff so I can touch on all the points. So like one thing, said a lot of great things. The mental health is very important, right? Mental health is wealth, right? Like you said, you got a lot of things going on in here. And I think that as coaches, we understand it and we have to put ourselves in our athlete's shoes sometimes, where it's like they got stuff going on at home, relationship problems, not eating. You know what I'm saying? Bickering with their siblings or, you know, their parents. And then they also have school, and that subject is just kicking their butt and they're struggling in that class. And then they're, come in here and lift some weights and it's heavy. And I'm not trying to be in here. Like, you know, and so I think, like you said, just in regards to your circle, like your pastor, shout out to my pastor, Pastor Ray Brown, Resurrection Church, if you're ever in San Antonio. But, you know, he's somebody that, you know, over the years, just through his sermons and everything, I've taken them and applied them to life, where it's like, you know, you get the cliche pastors, you know, like every day that you wake up is a good day. But it's like, man, that's really true. Yep. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes we just go through life and it's like, you know, there's coaches who have passed away in this past year. And yet me and you are here. So like sometimes we get caught up in this like, oh, my job is stressful and the kids. And then it's like, yo, I'm just thankful to have good health and to be able to still coach, because there's a coach who passed away in the 2023-2024 school year.
Yep.
So then that puts it in, like you said, it puts things in perspective. Seeking help, therapy, counseling, things like that. Sometimes you just need somebody else to listen to you and to give their perspective, to put things in perspective for you better, because you think you have it figured out, or you think, oh my gosh, my problems are so bad, or my problems aren't that bad. And then you have somebody that breaks it down for you and at least provides you with a different perspective to allow you to say, okay, I need to stop doing this, or I need to do this more. Right. So that was another thing that you touched on that was really great. Monty Sparkman, man, I heard him say a quote, and I remixed it, but it's all Monty's. And he was at the state clinic in San Antonio for the National High School Strength Coaches Association a couple of years ago. And he was saying, if you're going to go around beating your chest because your football team went 10-0 and was district champs, you better be beating your chest the following year if you go 5-5 and miss the playoffs. And that just hit so hard, because for me as a strength coach, I don't coach any sports or anything. So I hang my hat on what? Like, if football team is successful or not, it doesn't make me a better coach or a worse coach, right? So I hang my hat on being organized, being prepared, teaching my athletes to lift. I tell them all the time, if you leave here after your time with me and I didn't teach you anything, I failed you, right? That's how I feel. Even if it's something as simple as like putting clips on the end of the bar when you lift, because it sounds small and trivial, but like that could save somebody's toe one day.
Bro, all the gym fail videos.
Exactly. So something as small as that. So when I heard Monty say that, it's like, and like I said, I remixed it, but it's like, I don't get caught up in the wins and losses. I get caught up in, hey, I'm happy y'all are enjoying training. I'm happy that you want to be here. That to me is a state championship. Having a group of kids that enjoy training and then enjoy it to the point where they're becoming knowledgeable about it, where I can say, hey, what's RFE stand for? And everybody rear foot elevated, versus just going through the motions and not knowing. And so shout out to Monty, and you shouted out a lot of great people, man. And I think that, when you start to expand your circle, or not your circle, your network, you start to see people overlap, right? Like you said, Sean and Missy, they both helped me in getting equipment. When I first got to my job, I needed med balls, I needed landmines, I needed a lot of stuff. And they were able to take care of me and get it to me. Trap bars, they got it to me in a timely manner. And it's like, I didn't know Sean personally, right? But I knew Missy, and Missy knew Sean, and Sean was in the area in a sense. And so he was able to assist me. And so it's just like, it goes a long way when you introduce, hey, this is my boy Noonan. It's my boy Peter. Hey, you would like this guy, right? Like, that's different than like, oh yeah, I know Peter.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Peter Croc.
Yeah, no doubt.
Right. Versus like, hey, this is my guy. And it hits differently. And so I think that, introducing your network and your friends to other coaches pushes the profession forward, right? And allows us to grow. And now maybe somebody that that I don't, I come in contact and, hey, I got 8 racks in my weight room and sometimes 60, 70 kids. And I think that it's the end of the world. And you're telling me you got 6 racks and you got 90 kids and you make it work. So now my problem really isn't a problem. I just don't know how to find the proper solution for it. But you connect me with somebody that does. And then, like you said, and this is what this podcast is about, pushing the profession forward. I mean, for me, like I said, like, I don't have a legacy. I'm not a football coach, basketball coach. I don't have a wins-loss record. I don't claim, our boys basketball team went 40-2, state semifinalists. Like, I'm not sitting over here talking about I helped get the boys basketball team to 40 wins, most wins in school history, 3-time, back-to-back district champ, back-to-back state semi. Like, I'm not claiming that. That's their work.
Yeah.
I'm just the weights guy. Not really, but I'm the guy that, hey, in the off season I'm training them and everything, but like, the work that they put in is the work that they put in. I'm just a tool. I'm no different than, if they're failing math and they have to go see a math tutor. Well, the math tutor didn't take the exam for them. Mm-hmm. They just better prepared them for the exam, right? But at the end of the day, the kids still had to show up and do the work. And so man, that's a lot of great stuff. And that's another reason why I do this. And I'm sure people by now have caught on that we don't really talk about like X's and O's and exercise prescription, because for me, strength and conditioning is so much deeper than that. Because like if I can connect to a kid and explain to him or her the importance of training, taking care of your body, being able to, produce force, max effort, all those things, then it doesn't matter what I prescribe in the weight room. If they're not bought into it, if they don't believe in it, especially with kids today, they're going to question you unless you give them a reason not to, which is being organized and, being thorough in your explanation. So it's like, if I can get a kid excited about training, then it doesn't matter what we do, they're going to get better. I mean, we're talking about high school strength and conditioning. You're working with maybe middle school through 12th grade. So 13 to 18-year-olds, they're very impressionable. Oh, yeah. Their bodies are developing. I forget who I heard it from, but I definitely use it all the time. Like your teenage boy's best ally in steroid is puberty. So like the freshmen that want to get big and strong, it's like, just wait. When puberty hits, you're going to get big and strong and the voice going to get deep. And so it's like, you got to be in a place where you can get the kids to understand and buy in, and then everything else takes care of itself. And that's why I don't, Noonan, well, what type of exercise prescription do you like? All that stuff is great. And we talked about it off mic. It's like, if you want to learn about, reps and sets, if you want to learn about, exercise prescription, go read a book. Mm-hmm. Go listen to a podcast specifically for that. More importantly, go to a clinic. If you're in Texas, there's regional and, local clinics all year, right? Go to a clinic, go to that clinic, listen to the presenter, and then go and speak to the presenter and maybe get their contact information, and then maybe go and see them and see how they train. Like you talked about with Brett down at Texas State. You take the football team down to Texas State and San Marcos to watch practice. That's an opportunity for you to go and then say like, hey, I'm the strength coach here. Nice to meet you, yada, yada, yada. And Brett's the type of person, like, he's going to love to talk about strength and conditioning.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so.
And there's, I don't know anybody that wouldn't just open their doors.
Yeah.
And anybody is welcome to come and check out training at Hendrickson. We don't have all the answers. And I think that's the biggest deal with when it comes to the prescription of sets and reps and stuff. Man, everybody's logistics is different. You're on a block schedule, you got 5 classes. I'm on a block schedule, I got 4. But our athletic periods are different in the day. The layout is different. The number of kids, like the number of coaches, like there's too many variables to make it fit in a perfect little box for everybody.
Yeah.
But if I can give you, like you said, if I can give you an idea of how we function with these parameters and it helps you, great. But if I don't know how to help you, I'm pretty sure I can find somebody that can, and that's at the end of the day, can we make these connections, and can my network help you? And then eventually, or, maybe one day our net worth gets bigger, but, the piggy bank and the bank account may not get as big, but the impact that we can have. And so the legacy that you leave because you've taught these lessons, man, you can't quantify that. And I think at the end of the day, that's what's so vital about our job as strength and conditioning coaches, because these kids are going to go on from high school. They may or may not play at the next level. The majority of them will not. Yeah. But they can lift and they can train and they can exercise for the rest of their lives. So if we can leave them with a small amount of knowledge on how to do stuff, hopefully they don't end up in a gym fail video, but ish happens.
It happens.
But at the end of the day, they can say, well, I do know how to do this because Coach Croc taught me this, Coach Noonan taught me that, or some little stupid, acronym we gave them. Yeah. They can be like, oh yeah, that's what that is.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to hit you with a scenario as we kind of wrap this thing up. We talked a lot about powerlifting and stuff, and I can't remember if we touched on it, but nonetheless, the scenario is, how would you handle a parent wanting or pushing their kid to not powerlift because they feel like it's going to take away from said sport? So we all see these kids, man. You're like, man, you're strong as an ox. Boy, you'd be a great power lifter. And they're like, yeah, I would power lift, but like, mom or dad said it's going to take away from whatever other sport I play, or they're afraid I'm going to get hurt. How do you handle?
Bro, you're trying to get me caught up, man. Golly, Croc, man.
You can give us the PG-13, a little spice, but not a whole lot.
I mean, this exact scenario happened last year.
Yeah, you probably had a kid. You're like, man, I can get you to state if you came out here. And they were like, well, my parents said they don't want me to powerlift. And you're like, dude, first of all, the weights don't hit back,
bro. Okay. I'll just explain. I won't use names, but I'll explain.
No names.
Young lady, very talented, more so as a thrower than a basketball player. We have a very good girls basketball team.
Mm-hmm.
We've had a lot of good athletes come through. I do not train girls basketball.
Yeah.
She was a senior last year. Wonderful, wonderful person. I was able to coach her throwing. So we had already built a relationship. She did a great job throwing. I don't remember how far she went in terms of postseason. But, she already had strength and she had coordination from throwing and from basketball. And I said, hey, why don't you come think about it? And I had just gotten, Head Powerlifting. And I said, hey, why don't you come check it out?
Yeah.
Okay. She comes, her sister comes. She's all about it. I think the older sister more than the younger sister, but younger sister was in tow, which, I mean, they're coming to lift. They're working hard. They're not causing problems. They're great kids. And by all accounts, great parents too. But when I got hit with I don't think that she should powerlift for fear of injury, but I'm a weight room guy too. I was like,
Yeah, it's one of them type battles.
Okay. I was like, well, let me break this down for you. The playoff run that they're about to go on is going to go to this date. The time in which she has to compete to qualify for anything beyond regular meets is this date. They're going to clash.
Yeah.
The timeline is almost like the girls' playoff
And powerlifting
and like
state,
the end of powerlifting regular season is like right around that end of girls' state, like middle of spring breakish time. So you're going all the way through January and February, and if you don't get at least one meet in, there's no way you're going to qualify for regional or state because there's no district. And he said, end of the day, parents I'm not going to fight a parent on what they believe is best for their kid.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you all the information that I can. What I did tell this young lady is, I said, this is a conversation between you and your dad. I have explained what the timeline is and what I think should happen and how I think it would benefit you. I said, but one thing is for certain, you are always welcome in here. Your sister is always welcome in here. I don't want you to think that just because you can't compete, you are not a part of this program. You are not a part of this. And she was like, Coach, thank you. And to me, at the end of the day, it doesn't hurt me to leave that door open.
Yeah.
I don't know what she could have done. We may never know. She did not go on to play college basketball. She did not play much off the bench. It at the end of the day, it doesn't change her as a person. It doesn't change my viewpoint on her or her sister or that family. That's the decision that they made.
Yeah.
I don't particularly agree. I think she would have been perfectly fine. I don't think she would have gotten hurt, but I can't guarantee injury-free.
Correct.
Right? Like preparation and consistency help, but I think there is, some, whether you call it luck, divine intervention, or whatever, that you don't suffer any major injuries that derail your season, right?
Yeah.
We all get little bumps and bruises and illnesses and, maybe some tendonitis or whatever from overuse, particularly in a sport like powerlifting where you're very repetitive in your movements.
Mm-hmm.
But, at the end of the day, like you said, the weights don't hit back.
Yeah.
Outside of somebody being a knucklehead, You shouldn't sustain any serious trauma.
Yeah.
Right. But, I have seen it where somebody squats and the knees buckle. And, if it weren't for the wraps, everything would have been done, But those are few and far between when you really focus on the parameters of safety. And then I explained that. I said, we hammer safety, we hammer quality, and we hammer, being accountable about what you're doing. Like, we don't ego lift. If I tell you cut it, I tell you cut it.
Yeah, that's it.
If you go above that, the repercussion is I may just say you're not lifting this week, and you deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
So don't follow the program, man.
Yeah.
Follow the program. I promise you it's going to work, because I ain't going to give you any BS, because I don't have time to come up with BS.
Yeah.
We're going to work and get it done. So that was an unfortunate scenario last year.
Yeah.
But it was one that helped me learn. At the end of the day, we can't make everybody happy. I don't even care if you sold ice cream. You'd still find somebody that was unhappy that you didn't have X flavor, or you didn't come
swirls.
in a cone. You didn't I disagree with Nick Saban on that one. One of the few things, but you cannot make everybody happy, nor should you try. Mm-hmm. But I can make it at least as equitable and fair as possible.
For sure. And one thing I really appreciate that you said was, and I think a lot of coaches got to take this mentality, I left the door open, right? I can't tell a parent what to do with their kids or what to allow them to do or not to do. All I can do is advise them and give them the information. And this is what we do. This is what we focus on. This is how we operate. And from there, a parent is going to decide, okay, that's all great, but like they're still not doing it. Or they may say, okay, I didn't know this information. Thank you for providing it to me. And now I'm going to give them an opportunity, which is ultimately what you were wanting, which is the opportunity. And it's ironic, because it's like you're more likely to get hurt in basketball than you are powerlifting. And we're talking about knees and concussions. Like, I'm not going to say it hasn't happened, but the likelihood you're going to sustain a concussion in powerlifting is very, very, very low. The likelihood that you're going to tear an ACL as you would in basketball is very, very low. But again, it goes back to education. And then some people just have their bias about certain things, and they just have their perception. I mean, I remember when I was a kid and I was in high school and I was wrestling, and I told my grandparents I was wrestling. My grandma was like, you don't wrestle. She was thinking like WWE.
Oh yeah.
She wasn't thinking like wrestling, but like that was my grandma. That's all she knew. When she saw wrestling on TV, it was, but then it was WWF. But it was, SmackDown and all of that. And so, no, I think that's a lesson for everybody to understand, is just leaving the door open, because who's to say that, if that girl's a junior and mom and dad say no, that her senior year they say yes. And if you run them off, or even worse, if you close the door on her, maybe that other girl that was thinking about coming is like, Coach Noonan seems like an asshole. Mm-hmm. Now you got a reputation for something that's not even you, because of how you treated one individual who may or may not have, like you said, had a lot of success, but from your point of view, you felt like she would have had a lot of success, which is why you recruited her. And so I think that's something that we can all learn from, is just keeping the door open and saying like, hey, the weight room's here if you need it, and I'll be here. So if you want to come and train and power lift, let's get it. If you don't, hey, good luck to you, right? And then like you said, just giving the information. I think that's another thing that's important as strength coaches, is just making sure your T's are crossed, and your I's are dotted, because if not, if I'm 50-50 and I have a conversation with you and your stuff isn't on point, you might have just given me the conviction of, yeah, I knew I was right about not doing this. He doesn't even know what he's talking, So, and anytime you always, promote like the safety and everything as a parent, it does make you more comfortable to allow somebody to try something that you're not comfortable with, right? If you're talking about, man, we're going to blow big weight up and, we're going to get after it and we're going to grind. And as a parent, I don't want to hear that. I want to hear like, are you going to take care of my babies?
Yeah.
Hey, Coach Croc, we're going to teach them how to lift. We're going to ensure that we're lifting safely. They may have some tendinitis, as you said, some strains, but they're not going to have those injuries that they would see in a sport that they're already playing, then I got to take that information and I got to make that decision for me and my kids. But all you can do is provide me with that information, and then, like you said, leave the door open. So I appreciate that, man. At the end, are there any questions or anything from me? I like to, give my guests opportunity to ask questions. And
So this is something I've been kind of like rattling with.
Okay.
When you take your KPIs, and let's just go with football because they're the most KPI centered team sport.
Correct.
Right? How do you look at your KPIs and go, okay, not so much that we're progressing because that's easy to see, but like, do we have enough of XYZ? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
do we have enough guys touching 19, 18, 20, 22 miles an hour? Do we have enough guys that are squatting X weight, cleaning X weight? Like,
Yeah.
obviously, like we said, at the end of the day, the weight room is a tool. It factors into wins and losses, but it's not the deciding factor of wins and losses.
Yeah.
Like, your execution on the field is that. But if you are the slower and you are the weaker, there's likely that you will not be the winner.
Correct.
So how do you look at your KPIs and go, okay, we are in a good place, or dang, like I need to address this area?
That's a great question. So for those of y'all who don't know, KPI, key performance indicators, right? Things that you use, whether it's test or, whatever it is, exercise, like you said. That's something I'm kind of playing around with, right? I've been doing strength and conditioning for over 10 years. And since I've been in high school for 4 years, I'm kind of like 50-50 because I'll give you an example. Like our basketball players, we got a bunch of guys, okay? Like we ain't maybe had 2 guys on our team of 15 varsity guys that had over a 30-inch vertical. And we had maybe 3 guys on our team that were 6'5" and taller. So we don't have a whole lot of height and we don't have a whole lot of bounce, but we still out rebound everybody we play. So it's something I kind of struggle with because if I hang my hat on vertical jump and say, we got to get, like you said, we got to get X amount of guys in this range. Well, it kind of conflicts keeping the main thing, right? And so for me, my KPI is health, right? Because I look at it like my job is to prepare these athletes for sport. Your job is to improve their skills and coach them on the court. If I take a healthy Peter Noonan and I send him to football and then he's not able to get off the ball or he's not able, well, then there has to be somebody is at fault. Whether it's strength and conditioning and we're not getting them bigger, stronger, faster, whether it's football, we're not teaching them the appropriate technique, whether it's Peter just doesn't have the go like we need him to. And so for me, it's kind of like what Monty Sparkman said, about the, hanging your hat on the wins. Okay, so I hang my hat on, we have 20 guys on our football team that are touching 20 miles per hour or faster, but then we go and watch them on game day and they're getting ran down. It's like, what's going on here? That running back touched 20.1 miles per hour, but that same running back hit the open field on a 60-yard run and got ran down by the backside corner. That shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen.
Right.
I mean, obviously he took a good angle and maybe that guy's 21, 22 miles per hour, right? But for me, it's kind of like I look more at like injuries, to be honest with you. So I'm looking at so for example, last summer, I pulled from rank 1 all of our injuries, and I just looked at the things that I can control. So I looked at soft tissue injuries like hamstrings, hip flexors, quads, and then I looked at our main joints. So knees, yes, but more so like ankles and shoulders. Okay. And then I just pulled data, and I found that we had our volleyball team, I believe, led all programs in like ankle injuries. So I thought to myself, okay, what can I do to improve or at least reduce the amount of ankle injuries we have? If you jump and land on somebody's foot, I'm sorry, I believe that if you train enough, you can reduce the severity of the injury, But if you step on somebody's foot and turn over an ankle, it's going to roll regardless of how strong you are.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, Adrian Peterson tore his ACL, one of the freak. RG3 tore his ACL. They had to rehab like everybody else, came back 6-7 months, but the best of the best athletes still tore ligaments and tendons, and you can't tell me that they don't take care of their bodies. And so it's like, you're not going to 100% prevent injuries. So for me, I looked at, okay, we had all of these ankle injuries. And then I thought to myself, what are we doing as far as, I mean, we always do, unilateral, bilateral, lower body movement, squatting, hinging, jumping, landing, things of that nature. But like, what is something that we can do to address that specific injury? And so what I did was started doing like barefoot stuff at the end. So we would do our lift, and then at the end we would do like a heel toe walk. We would do like farmer's walks, barefooted, just things like that. We would get the rope out, walk on the rope just to kind of loosen up, for like the soft tissue in the bottom of the foot and things like that. And I think, like I said, we had like 5 or 6 in the 2022 school year. In the 2023 school year, I had 0. Now, I could, like Monty Sparkman said, hey, look at me in my program. I prevented ankle injuries. Or it could have just been maybe girls got a little more athletic, right? Maybe their mechanics and things changed, so they weren't turning those ankles over. Maybe my ankle prevention program worked like it should, and we didn't have any. I don't really know. I can say and I can attribute, hey, we reduced our ankle injuries from 2023 to 2024 from 6 to 0, or for 5 or 6 to 0. I can say that maybe that directly correlated. But then if I implement that same program this fall and we get back up to 4 or 5 ankle injuries, well, you know what I'm saying? And so I think KPIs are important, right? As far as like making adjustments for your programming. But you can't prevent a coach from overuse. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I can improve football. So we were talking about football, right? I can do all the ISO neck I want. But at the end of the day, if we're not teaching guys how to tackle, you know what I'm saying? And guys are head down tackling and getting stingers and concussions. If we're not teaching guys, how to, near foot and, opposite shoulder, get your head across, and instead we're allowing them to dive head first at knees, it doesn't matter how much ISO neck I do to prevent those concussions. And so I think that's something I kind of struggle with, because yes, there are things that I can measure and I can say, okay, in the first phase of our program, we're working on movement patterns, we're working on mechanics, right? And then on the second phase, we'll do like a 3-rep max, and then we'll put that data into Rack Coach, and then we'll test again 4 weeks. So over the course of 8 weeks, we're testing twice. I can see if my program from a hands-free front squat to a front squat in those 8 weeks, I can see if there's been any type of progression or regression as far as testing goes. But if we are, incorporating mobility with our core lifts, so we're doing shin boxes supersetted with, our front squat supersetted with shin boxes, or we're doing a Saigon squat to ham or a squat to reach, or we're doing some T-spine rotation or some type of shoulder mobility, and the trainers are reporting that we're having, a low number of hip flexor injuries, hamstring pulls, quad pulls, shoulder, type of injuries. Well, to me, I'm going to continue to incorporate that mobility, because I'm going to believe that mobility is attributing to it. So I know some people like to use like the power index, where they'll take like your body weight and they'll, put in a formula with your vertical and see how much power you generate. And that's great. And we actually it's ironic, our defensive coordinator that we just hired, he requested that, our body weights and our verticals, and he kind of came up with a power index and everything. And it was funny because you look at it and it's like, out of the top 10, 7 of them are like starters and they're guys for us. But then you look at like number 9, and it's this freshman, and he's raw, and he's like 320, and his vertical is like maybe 15. And it's like, oh man, like his power index amongst the 70 football players we have puts him at number 9. But then you watch him move and you see him play, and it's like, he ain't top 10.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my struggle with the KPIs, is like, okay, do you hang your hat on that this is like a protocol and this protocol is working? or these numbers are valid and they're translating to what we want to see. So if our coach says like, oh, we got to be able to, we got to be able to finish in the fourth quarter. We need to work on our conditioning. So then we come up with a conditioning test and everybody passes the conditioning test. We assume that we're in condition, but then we get out in a game and we run out of gas in the third quarter and we get smoked in the fourth. Your KPIs are telling you that your conditioning is where it should be, but the result of that football game is telling you otherwise. So that's something I kind of struggle with as a strength coach. I'm sure there's somebody out there smarter than me that knows way more that's like, hey, I do this KPI and it correlates to this and it tells me that. Great. But it's just, like I said, there's so many variables and it's like, cool, you have hamstring problems and we do all this protocol, all this mobility, all this soft tissue work for you and your hamstrings are fine. And then all of a sudden you pull it. And it's like, oh, well, what do we do? But then it's like there's so many variables, especially at the high school level. You could have gained 10 pounds that semester. So everything is going great and your mobility is improving and your flexibility is improving, but you gained 10 pounds over the past 3 months. Nobody accounted for that. My KPIs say that you're more mobile than you've ever been.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so, I mean, I guess I'm kind of playing like devil's advocate, but I also feel like as strength coaches, we feel like, oh, we do this concussion protocol and we have no concussions. You can't stop somebody from getting hit in the head.
No.
You know what I'm saying? And so I think that there are KPIs that are valid and that work and that translate. But for me, it's just kind of like there's just too many variables. I've been fortunate that since I've been at my job for 2 years, we haven't had really anybody. I think the other day, I actually asked this the other day because I was getting on the guys for like skipping mobility. Right? Like every core lift has, like I said, is paired with a mobility or some type of stretch. And there were guys that were hitting their triples or their doubles on front squat and then they were just chilling. I'm like, you didn't do your shin boxes for your hip mobility. You didn't do your squats or reach for your hamstrings and your hips. And so I stopped the music and I was getting on them and I'm like, guys, okay, there's 60 guys in here. Raise your hand in the past year if you've like pulled a hamstring or a quad. And like 2 people raised their hand. And I said, guys, that's pretty good numbers. If 58 out of 60 people haven't pulled a hamstring or a quad during fall camp, during the summer, during fall camp, during the season, during off season, I would like to believe that the things that we are incorporating and we're doing are working because we are addressing the hip mobility, the ankle mobility, the thoracic spine and the lack of mobility that a lot of kids have because they sit like this. So it's like, if I'm doing things to address specific issues and said issues aren't happening, then I believe that they're working. But in reality, maybe these kids aren't playing 90 snaps in a game. So that's why so there's just so many. And I'm splitting hairs and devil's advocate and all of that. But it's like, it's just so tough because maybe this year is the year where 20 people pull their hamstrings and we might not have changed anything. We might have the same kind of summer protocol that we've always had and the same fall camp protocol and the same mobility. And all of a sudden I got 20 hammies. Now, obviously, I'm going to look at my program, but it's like my program worked before.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my thing. And hopefully, I don't send anybody down a rabbit hole, whether they're like trying to scrap all their KPIs or it's like pushing them further into their KPIs. Because, again, I think that there are KPIs, that are valid. But like I said, there's just so many variables. And that's my other thing as a strength coach. It's like, I've been at places when I was in college where like we had the best off season we've ever had. And we went out there and went 3-7, 3-8. But we had the best off season. Yeah. Summertime was fire. Almost 100% attendance. We were getting after it 4 times a week. Guys were eating. We were bringing in nutrition, man. And we went out there and got our boots smoked. So it's like, or you got guys that's like, man, we do a great job of taking care of this guy in the weight room. And then he gets in the football game and they give him 50 carries.
Yeah.
I don't care how much training you do. You get 40, 50 carries as a 16, 17-year-old kid, like that's going to wear you down. And then you do it again and again. And we played 10 games in high school. So you got 450 carries in a 10-game season. And then you're going into the playoffs and your body's breaking down. It's like, duh. Yeah. So that's just my take on it. But I do think that, outside of football, volleyball, when I was at Marshall, we used to jump in and jump out. So the girls would come for volleyball. They'd come to the weight room. They'd get on the jump mat. They'd jump. We'd record that vert. They'd go to practice. After practice, when they're supposed to come in and lift, they'd come in, they'd jump. And we would compare and contrast their vertical. right? And that kind of allowed us to say like, hey, coach, you said today was an easy day in practice, but Tiffany's vertical went from 29 to 26. That's a 3-inch decrease. Like, that's not good. And then you find out, oh yeah, after practice, we made them run 20 flights of stairs. Okay, let's try not to run stairs next time, right? And let's do the same thing. So then we bring them back in, they jump in, jump out. Tiffany comes, she jumps 28 and a half. Cool, that's on par with your 29-inch vertical. They go through a practice, they come in, she jumps again. She's at 28 even. Cool, you're only half an inch down, and you didn't run stairs. As a strength coach, we're going to say like, hey, yeah, we need to stop running those stairs because it's not decreasing her performance, right? And that's what we could use as a KPI to then tell our coaching staff, like, they don't need to run bleachers after a 90-minute practice, after a 90-minute volleyball practice. They don't need to go run, for 20 minutes up and down the stadium stairs. And we were like I said, I was at Marshall, and we're in the basketball arena. So they're running like all the way up to the top, touching, jogging all the way down. And they're doing that for like 20 straight minutes. And so it's like, that's a great KPI that's tangible that you can give to the coach if your argument is, we don't need to be running bleachers after practice, So that's my take on it. Like I said, I'm different. I'm about to take the benches out of my weight room because I don't like my kids bench pressing because their egos kick in and they lose their minds when they spot. And if you work in high school athletics and your kids bench press, I guarantee you somebody's almost going to die because their spotter is not paying attention. And I've seen kids like with the barbell a couple inches from their face, but luckily they had that spotter right there who, oh crap, and grabbed it, right? So I'm just different when it comes to training because I feel like I can train kids up all I want, but if coach don't put them in, it don't matter.
Right.
And I've seen that happen before where guys are, oh my gosh, he's got a 41-inch vertical and he's a legit 4.4, and game day comes and he's standing next to you on the sideline the whole game. That 40-inch vertical and 4.4, 6 foot, 180-pound corner is standing next to you because he doesn't know the difference between cover 4 and cover 2. So it's like, I take my job serious and I think it's important, but at the same time, it's like there's just so many variables with high school athletics, especially when you're talking about club sports, right? Oh man, like we're getting them bigger, stronger, faster, but then they're going and playing 80 games over the course of 4 months in their off season when they're supposed to be getting bigger, stronger, faster. I think I actually tweeted this out the other day where like, oh, kids will play 3 or 5 games in a 36-hour time period, but make sure they don't lift too heavy the day before a match.
Yeah.
And it's like that 30-minute lift ain't going to be what puts them over the edge. It's probably that third game that they played because they played at 12, 3, 5, and 7 on a Saturday. And we going to talk about the weight room. So, I mean, that's just my take. Don't get me started. I can go on and on. But, yeah, that's my KPIs take.
Nah, I love it, man. Nah, that's good.
Well, Peter Noonan, I appreciate you, man, paying it forward. Shout out to what's hanging with Coach Noonan. What's the name of it?
Hanging with Coach Noonan.
Hanging with Coach Noonan. I was a guest on that podcast, and like that's not trying to get another rant, but like that's another thing I feel very strongly about is like if somebody reaches out to you to be on their podcast and you can afford to do it, do it. Because like you said, you don't know who you can help. And had I not been on your podcast, it would have given you every right when I asked you to be on mine to be like, man, I'm busy. And so I think that's just definitely important for pushing the profession forward is, if somebody asks you to speak, go speak. Somebody asks you to present, go present. Somebody asks you to be on a podcast, go be on their podcast, because I've had people to this day that are like, Coach Croc, I heard you on this podcast. Coach Croc, I heard you speak at this event. Can you share X, Y, and Z? And it's like, okay, had they had not reached out to me saying that they listened to me on a podcast or listen to me or see me present and speak, I wouldn't have given them the same amount of information as I would versus Coach Croc. I've listened to you before. I went to a clinic and listened to you speak and I enjoyed it. And now I need help in what I'm doing. You can have it all.
Yeah.
Because you're investing in yourself by going to that clinic, by listening to that podcast. And so anybody, like I said, anybody that gets an opportunity to speak, present, whatever, do it. because you don't know what coach that's there, that's listening, that's eating up every word that you're saying, that's taking all that information and, not to be extreme, but like could save a kid's life.
Yep.
Hey,
No
make
doubt.
sure you squat and you got a spotter. No, I didn't think about that. I just have the guy do abs, which is actually kind of common. I have one guy squat and the other guy's doing abs. Well, no, coach, have that guy, instead of doing abs, spot, and like you said, coach that kid up. So now one guy's lifting and the other guy's motivating, encouraging, but he's also coaching him up. So that's all I got. I appreciate you, Peter, man. I to this day, I still don't know how to close out the podcast. And so, episode 1, episode 6. Yeah, man, The Croc Show.